out my top tarot decks of 2025. Many of these decks, although maybe not released this year, are decks that have come into my collection this year, so they are new decks to me, and so I've been very excited to be trying these decks out. Do comment below which are your favourite decks this year, and let's see how our lists compare. This is a mixture of indie and mass market decks, but mass market decks that started life out as indie decks as well. Kicking off with my first mass market deck then is this Llewellyn deck, the Forest of Enchantment Tarot, which comes in this big box, and therefore I keep my cards in the little bag now. Many of you will be aware that I showed this quite a lot earlier on in the year, in particular the summer, and you may also be aware that this now has an accompanying oracle of its own, which I have yet to purchase, and this has made it to my list because I was really drawn to using this back in the summer. This deck just speaks to me of kind of that spring heading into summer energy. So if you think around the 1st of May, Beltane, where everything is going into full swing, growing, and as I said, just a lot of summer energy, and I thoroughly enjoyed using this deck. This was actually one of the first decks that I got quite early on when I discovered tarot, and I didn't use it a great deal last year, but boy have I made up for it this year. This deck just makes me smile so much, and I just love the fact that it transports me into this whimsical fairy tale world of magical beings and magical fairy tales. And so, as well as being a good reader for me, it's also a place where I just feel that I can escape to. And I always find myself coming back and just enjoying looking at the artwork. And when I do readings with this, I just love the descriptions that Lune Weatherstone has given in relationship to the fairy tales, but also in relationship to the meanings of the cards. And it is a Rider-Waite Smith inspired deck as well. And it's just magical, this deck. Sticking with Rider-Waite Smith, I'm including my Universal Pocket Waite in my list this year. This deck needs no introduction, but I will explain why it's made it into my list. It's because this year is the first year that I've actually felt like I've bonded with this deck, and I actually understand it. And actually appreciate the artwork and the images and the symbology that is included in this deck, because it wasn't a natural fit for me. I simply got this deck because, you know, you've got to have at least one classic RWS deck, but I've really fallen in love with this deck this year, and I think it's because I did a bit of a deep dive earlier on in the year where I actually took the time to try and explore the images on a slightly deeper level than I've ever attempted in the past, and that was using my Ultimate Guide to Tarot book, but I also connected these cards with their meanings in relationship to astrology and the Tree of Life from the Kabbalah system, and I think that helped me to appreciate this deck on a whole new level, which I hadn't experienced up until that point. And I feel kind of super chuffed really that I've now have a connection with this deck and with Pixie's artwork, because I always felt that was sort of missing from my tarot practice. And yeah, I just love the imagery now. It is simple, and I can understand why it is the go-to classic deck, because it just offers everything that you would want from a tarot deck. And so really showing this to you, if you've ever been in two minds with this deck, I would say persevere with it. because it will come at some stage. And when it does, and you have that aha moment, you will see this deck in a totally new light.
And if you are interested to see how this compares to my list last year, you can check out this video here.
Moving on to indie decks that are now mass market, the first being the Transient Light Tarot, now a Hay House deck. Started off as an indie deck by Ari Weisner. I love this deck, and it wasn't a deck I'd ever really planned to get. The reason I love this deck is just the sheer simplicity of it, and whilst I don't think it's officially a pip deck, I feel like it's sort of in between a pictorial deck and a pip deck, because the images are very simple, but there is a beauty in the simplicity. I mean, look at that, the devil cutting the cords of the things that you are maybe addicted to or obsessed with. We've got the snake here, possibly representing your shadow self, and the images just scream the meanings very, very instantly. And so this is my deck that I turn to if I want a quick answer or a quick insight into a situation. And I totally wasn't expecting that from this deck, because I don't really know what I was expecting. And I just love the muted colour scheme. And yeah, just the use of very simple symbols to convey rather complex messages. Another thing I really appreciated about this deck is you have these past, present and future cards which you flip over and then hide within the deck. So the cards kiss, and then obviously you shuffle them. When you spread out your cards, you take the cards that are touching past, present and future cards for your reading, but probably in a slightly more organised and eloquent way, which I'm not demonstrating very well, to see what the cards can offer. And I've never seen that in any other deck, and I just quite liked it as an idea, really simple way and an alternative way of selecting your cards for the classic past, present and future spread. Comment below if you have this deck and you've actually tried this spread. I've tried it a couple of times and I was really impressed by the results. I should also say, for a Hay House deck, the guidebook is actually really quite beautiful, and I suspect this is a representation of what the original indie book was like. If you've got any Hay House decks at all, you're probably aware that most of them are quite plain, maybe the odd image, but yeah, there's an image of every single card in this book. And I feel like Ari Weisner, or whoever designed this, has spent a bit more time thinking about the font and the overall aesthetic. And you have these beautiful black pages with a poem for some of the cards as well, to sort of give an additional / alternative insight. And I think it's just for the major cards. Yeah, so each major card has its own poem, which was specially written for the card. The second mass market, previously an indie deck, is the Crow Tarot by MJ Cullinane. This is the US Games edition. Again, this is new into my collection this year. But I love crows anyway, and I already had the Urban Crow Oracle. But there is something just charming about the crows, and I think MJ Cullinane has really successfully captured the sort of inquisitive and cheeky nature of the crows. But she's also been able to add in emotion there on some of the cards. And yeah, so if we look at this Five of Cups card, that crow just looking with its head down at the cups that are slowly draining away, you can feel that emotion that she's managed to overlay into the pose of this crow. And so far this has been a really good reader. I have this sort of, I don't know if mantra's the right words, but the crows never lie. And so particularly since about October time, I've enjoyed getting this deck out and just asking their crows for their wisdom and their advice. Some of you will know that I've been doing some shadow work in my journal and working with the Morrigan and her energy. This deck has helped me to tap into that as well. But yeah, the illustrations are beautiful. I'm a big fan of MJ Cullinane's decks anyway. Her Enchanted for Haxa Tarot was in my top decks of last year list. But the crows have taken its place this year. Another thing that's worth mentioning is that on each of these cards, I mean, you get this in a lot of tarot decks anyway, but MJ has put specific symbols, objects within the cards, and in her expanded book, which I was lucky enough to get as well, it talks a little bit more about the significance of some of the symbols that you might find in the background. So it really builds upon the meaning of each card, as you would expect. And also how that fits in with the Rider-Waite system. And if you've ever had your eye on this deck and you weren't sure whether it was for you or not, I think this is a fabulous deck, kind of full of depth, but also you can read it on quite a simplistic level as well. So yeah, a very versatile deck in that respects.
These decks are in no particular order, but they are decks that I have just been drawn to, decks that I have worked with a lot this year, decks that gave the most helpful meanings, or decks I've simply just enjoyed having in my collection and looking through them from time to time.
Okay, indie decks then. This is the Textured Tarot by Lisa McLaughlin. This is no longer available, or this version isn't. There is a mini pocket version still available on our Etsy at the time of filming, but I've included this one because, one, I just love the artwork. I love the fact that although it's a collage deck, Lisa has cleverly included manipulated fabric. So all these lines here, I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up, have been created via stitching into them. It looks like a sewing machine, and so she's really crafted these textured, hence the reason it's called Textured Tarot, images. And this again is a really good reader. I think Lisa has successfully captured the pure essence of each card, and you get a very quick understanding of what the core message of this card is. And as it's my only collage deck, this deck is my go-to for some of the oracle decks that I have in my collection. So some of my Rebecca Campbell decks, and I've talked about pairings in previous videos, and also one of my Yasmin Boland decks. And this deck pairs really well with those. And the other thing I like about this deck is the pastel colour palette of many of the cards. You know, a lot of tarot decks are very bright, very vibrant, or as we saw in the Ari Weisner deck, a muted colour palette, whereas this one visually feels very different because we have all these sorts of baby pinks, and kind of light duck egg turquoises, and I've always been drawn to those colours anyway, even though my general aesthetic is probably something a bit darker. I can appreciate some of these lighter colours. I mean, even in the pentacles, which are mostly greens and browns, we still have this sort of lighter green colour. And just these images have just been crafted in such a beautiful way. And you don't necessarily notice them straight away, but these cards definitely invite you to take a closer look and really just to admire the way the artist has put these together. My final top tarot deck in this list for 2025 needs no introduction because I've been talking about this deck constantly for the last few videos, but for those of you that haven't seen those videos, let me introduce you to indie deck, the TOMAR Tarot by the lovely Debs Allen, who came onto the channel to talk about this deck. This is the deck that is helping me take my tarot practice and my understanding of how the tarot system works to a whole new level. And this is because the accompanying book, the 5-part manual that Deborah has created, really goes deep with the information, the history of tarot, the importance of symbolism, and how the astrological signs or archetypes can be connected and used to help us understand the cards further, with additional reference and work related to reversals as well. And what Deborah has done is cleverly embedded those connections within each of the cards. Using the Three of Swords as an example, we have the planet Saturn with the symbol for Libra, and that this is connected to the reversed Two of Swords. And in the book, Deborah describes how we can use the attributes quite often to the previous card in the tarot, but not always. It could be another card to help us understand the actions or qualities that we might need to help us adjust to the outcome that we are looking for, particularly if we're using Deborah's adjustment spread, which is suggested in one of her manuals. So I mentioned colour, talking about the textured tarot, and this is has a very simple colour palette. And when Deborah came onto the channel, she explained that these colours represent certain ideas, and the reason the colours have been paired back is quite often colours and symbolism of colour will mean different things to different people. And so Deborah's focus for this deck is really through the symbolism and how we can use the symbolism to help us unlock the key meanings of these cards. This is a phenomenal deck, particularly for anybody that wants to evolve their understanding with the tarot and how things fit in a wider or more holistic way, particularly if you're interested in the astrological or Kabbalah side held within the tarot deck. I absolutely love this deck, and I do get a lot of joy just looking at the designs, which are stunning, but also to look at all the detail. And when you read the book, you will notice that even these triangles here are here to represent the sign that they're in. So whether it's water or earth or fire or air, every last detail has been carefully considered. in this stunning deck. And I definitely recommend you check out my conversation with Deborah Allen to find out more.
As always, I really do appreciate you choosing to hang out with me today to check out my favourite tarot decks of 2025. I'm interested to hear, how did this compare to your list of tarot decks? And if you haven't done so already, do comment below to say which were your favourites this year, so people that are new to tarot have some other decks that they can discover and research. Now, I will be doing a top oracle deck video very soon, but until then, here are some other videos you may like to watch in the meantime. I'm Sally, this is my channel, Vaudeville Manor House of Art and Tarot. Until the next video, sending you much love, and I hope you manage to find some joy and peace in your life wherever you are today. Bye bye.